Hello Grandmasters, Mike from the WCA. Going to show you guys a quick video. This is for our 12 and 2 o'clock group. It's from the winter 2014 session. And why we're showing you this position, it's a really interesting training position. We use this to kind of get you to see things on both sides of the board. A big problem at our age and our rating is that we have a tendency or a feeling of just looking at our own moves and we forget about our opponent a lot. So in this training position, I'm going to have you look at things from both sides of the board so you get a good view and you get used to looking for your opponent's threats too. So let's take a look at this from white first. And what are we going to do about the problem we have here? We don't want the queen that I'm highlighting here taking this knight for free. So what to do with it? Well, in normal chess games, you have a lot of options that you can choose. You can move the piece that's being attacked. You can protect it. You can make bigger threats. You can trade it. In the actual game that this came from, white decided to protect the knight with this really cool move, Queen E5, and we'll see what happens in another video. This is a really good move. It protects the knight, and it also sets a trap that black fell into. It may not be the best move in the position, though, because it turns out the best move in the position was to take the bishop on f7 with this move, to take it. Let me show you one more thing, though. In case you had noticed here, the king could have protected the knight too, right? But that would have been a bad idea. Just check out the highlight. If you walk your king to that square, it's true the queen's not going to take the knight, but after the move h6, she'll take it next, and you're going to be in big trouble. You're going to lose that knight because it's pinned. So good advice is don't walk yourself into a pin to protect something unless you absolutely have to. Okay, so let's look at the main continuation today, which is going to be this move, knight takes f7. Okay, because you're a WCA student, you already know that we never make trades unless the trades help us. And it turns out that this trade helps us because after we make the trade, we're going to be able to win a pawn. The question is, which pawn? Once the king takes the knight, and black pretty much has to take back, right? Black's not going to go down a piece. When black takes the knight, you'll notice that the king is wide open. He's wide open on the F file. He can be attacked. And he also has to deal with these opening lines on this side of the board. Now, why does the king have that problem? The king has the problem because the queen here is the piece that's going to check him. And when she checks, she's also going to be able to take off either one of those pawns. So the question is, which square do we check from? Do we check from here, f3, then take the b pawn, or do we check from f2 and take the a pawn? It looks like you can do either one, and you can, but you need to be careful. And here's where the position can change sides in a hurry. Let's say we play queen f2, and we decide to go after the a pawn. No matter how you check, black is going to get out of check the same way. Black is going to play the move queen f6. And with queen f6, black is telling you, okay, take my pawn. Now, you could trade queens up there, and I'll show you what happens if you trade queens. But if you decide to take this a pawn, you better be real careful as white because black is going to play the move queen f1 check. And now you have a problem. You need to come to h2 with the king. And on h2, you're going to run into a series of checks. For example, queen e2 check. Not so easy to escape these checks. King h3, and then queen f1, and black is going to try their best to keep repeating this position, and the game would end in a draw, most likely. However, be very careful. Let's go back to taking that pawn again. Here's the check. Did anyone notice what happens if the king goes to h4? Turns out that black is going to mate white, so make sure you see this. Queen h1 check, king g5, and can you pause the video and find the checkmate from here? Queen c1 check, king h4, queen h6 mate. Very cool position. So you need to be real careful if you take this pawn up here on a7. So let's look at the other pawn that we can take back in this position. The king just takes your knight back. We play queen f3, which is the better choice, because now when they block, and they will block with their queen, you take the b pawn. Now on this check, white has the option of swinging the queen back and going into the endgame in case the queens come off the board, having an extra pawn. So this would be a much better version of this for white. But let's take a look at this, Grandmasters. If you ask the question after this check, why doesn't black just move their king? Why is black offering white this trade when they play queen f6 here? Why are they offering the trade? And if we're white, why don't we just make the trade? Well, that's a very good question. Stop your video and ask yourself, if you're white in this position, should I trade queens on f6? Okay, I hope you realized in this position, you better not trade queens. If you trade queens, you're going to lose the game. When you trade that queen, the black king will take back, and the problem for white in this position are these two pawns right here. They are so weak that black eventually is going to get their king into this square and attack them, and one by one they're going to fall because the white king is not going to be able to stay here forever. Eventually, black is going to force his way in, take these pawns, and then one of these guys up here will become a queen. If you're white, however, it's true, you're lost. But I wouldn't give up. Our 4 o'clock class would probably recognize this pattern. Watch what white does here. They might play b4. They would invite black to come in to attack the pawn as planned. They would play b5. And then black might say to himself, hey, wait a minute. If I can make the white king move, then I'm going to be able to win this pawn over here. And that's really good thinking, except you need to be really, really careful in this position. If you play another waiting move like h6, white is going to play the move c5, setting up one of the most famous traps in all of chess endgames. Amazing trap. If you don't know the trap, please pay attention, because I don't want to see you guys fall into that in this position. Here, it's absolutely necessary for black to break up those white pawns. Black could play a move like b6 here, forcing white to deal with those captures. So let's say they do a little bit of trading here. This could easily happen, right? C takes. Now it becomes white's turn. White has to move their king. You're going to take the first pawn off, and I'll just walk you through to a winning position for black. What does white do? Wherever they move their king, black eventually is just going to come in, and you can do your best to stall, but here come the pawns. This is a really important move because it stops the white king from getting out. King comes back down. Now you play g4, and the white king is forced to the back row. You just take this pawn, and you have these two passed pawns. This is a very easy win for any class at the WCA, right? So that totally wins. But let's go back for a moment. Let's go back to this position. Here is where we're trying to get white to move their king. You absolutely have to find the move, or something like the move b6. If you fail to recognize that, or if you've never seen this trap before, and you play h5, you're going to lose the game. So now you can pause the video, work really hard, and figure out what white's winning move is. Well, white's winning move is b6. Absolutely incredible. You're giving black a chance to take your pawn two different ways, and it doesn't matter how you take the pawn. And you need to take it because it's going to take one of your pawns and become a queen if you don't. If you take with the c pawn, so you're kind of taking with the pawn that's coming from the right side of the screen you're looking at, then white plays this amazing move from the left side of the screen. They push this pawn. They push the a pawn up, and black has a huge problem. This pawn here on a6 is about to take and become a queen. That's a big problem. If you take, then they simply push past you, and there's no way for the black king to stop the pawn. You could take a pawn and check me, but I'm just going to put my king on g2, and you'll see after king f5, there's no way you're stopping this pawn, and black is completely lost. If you try to get your pawns to move, they're going to be too slow. The queen is going to come on the board with check, and she'll just get in the middle of these pawns, take them all, and black is going to lose the game. So that's why you had to be really, really careful, even in that losing position. So how did we get to that position? Let's go back. Remember this check, queen f3? And then we said that black's best choice is to activate the queen. Here, when the queen comes on the board, should we trade queens? Absolutely not. If you trade the queens, the king takes. And then you might say, well, yeah, you just showed me that, but we ended up winning the game anyway as white. You shouldn't, because after this move b4, if they try the trick, just remember the pattern. King g5, you're going to win that pawn, and as white goes to set up their trick, here, what's the key move? Try to remember to play the move here, b6. And after b6, you have a completely winning position. They do a little bit of trading. You just keep trading, making sure white can't make a queen. The king eventually has to come down, and then you'll win this endgame. Okay? So there's just a quick little video, a lot of queen moves, a lot of traps, some king and pawn endings, just stuff for you to review. Take a good look at it. We'll see you guys in class.